Good morning, folks. Members, take their seats. We've got 2 hours here, folks, and this will probably be our last meeting of the year. But you never know. We're in the legislature, nothing dies up here. But anyways, first up, approval of the minutes of 303, 308, 309, 310, 314, 315, 316, and 317. For that, I will look for a motion. From the ranking member, a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I have a second from Representative Penn. Discussion on the amendments. Seeing none. All in favor of passing the amendments as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The minutes are approved. I'm going to stand fast for just a minute or two. I'm waiting for my vice chair to get here, who should be en route. And you're allowed to give her a hard time when she gets here. I'll wait till you get to your microphone so you can say that more clearly, Representative.
I didn't hear it, but I can imagine.
While I'm waiting, WebEx Master, do we have any committee members on WebEx?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, we currently do not have any members of the committee on WebEx.
Okay. Good morning. Getting up and having meetings at 8 o'clock are a little rough, I understand. I'm just standing at ease until my vice chair gets here. Your group's okay.
You should be good.
Okay. I may have to go out. Okay, I just got a message from my vice chair. She's on her way up. So we'll just stand fast for a minute. While we're waiting, I need to mention that we have a couple of new members here today. Representative Hoheisel, of course, is covering for Representative Potter. Representative Highland is covering for Representative Eric Smith. And we have Representative Croft is covering for Representative Stephen Howe. Stephen Howe has another meeting at the same time this morning up in transportation. And I think Eric Smith is on a conference committee. And I think Representative Epley says he needed to leave at 9:30. Okay. So he has a conference committee. So we're going to have some people. I find it interesting. I have, I've chaired this committee for 6 years, and I have all my vice chairs sitting here today. Representative Highland was my first vice chair. Representative Arnkamp was my second vice chair. And now I have Representative Arnberger, my best vice chair.
Can I get that in writing?
No. But, and they were all good. Just goes to show you that I burn them out pretty fast. I think every 2 years.
I'm true to you.
Yes, my ranking member has been with me from the beginning. And of course, 6 years ago, all my hair was all black. So it's what 6 years of chairing this committee will do to you. He dyes his. So that's the big difference. But this will probably be our last meeting. I'm sure it will be our last meeting, hopefully. And I want to thank the entire group. You've been a great group. Being on Fed and State is not the easiest job. It's the most controversial committee that we probably have because we establish state policy. And I want to thank all of you. Been very great as far as coming in and making your meetings and offering good discussion during the working of the bills. And I'm appreciative of that. If by chance we all get elected or we choose to run and get elected, I hope you're all thinking about when you submit to the new speaker that you would request to come back to Fed and State. I would hope you would choose to do that. I mean, do you really want to be on appropriations this early in the morning? So probably not. With that, we're going to start. But again, thank you. And at the end, if we have some time, we need to really thank our revisers. They've been great. Mike, Jason, of course, none of us could survive without Connie. She keeps us, and Jordan's been great. Kyle's been great. Everybody's just been great. And of course, special thanks to our WebEx master who brings in these folks from other states. But committee, if you'll look in your file and pull up HB 2740, I would look to the committee. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out House Bill 2740 favorably for passage.
Do I have a second from the ranking member? Open for discussion. The chair has an amendment. The great machines. While they're handing it out, I will explain the amendment. I should mention that today we have a number of amendments. I'm going to put time limits on amendments. The only way that we can get this done. It'll probably be about 7 minutes. I know I can get mine done pretty quickly. What we're handing out is an amendment on the definition of gray machines. We're outlawing gray machines in this bill. And the reason we're changing the definition, I'm going to look to Jason to explain why they're handing it out. Jason, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment appears on page 18 under the Kansas Lottery Act definition section to change the definition of gray machine. This was due to a court case on prosecution for unlawful gray machines dating back to 2011, in which the court had ruled that the current definition was not sufficient for prosecuting unlawful gray machines. And so you have a revised definition that is basically based on that 2011 court decision there to give the Attorney General and Racing and Gaming Commission more prosecutorial authority to prosecute the illegal use of gray machines.
Thank you. Do I have a second on my amendment? Representative Reese. Discussion on the amendment is just clarification based upon the Supreme Court decision. Seeing no discussion, I move my amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The bill has been amended. I have a second amendment. The 20%. Yeah. While it's being handed out, I will have Jason explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment being passed out deals with the entities that can enter into marketing agreements with a lottery gaming facility manager. If you recall from the bill, a casino manager can enter into up to 50 marketing agreements, and then there's 10 of those agreements are earmarked for nonprofit, fraternal, or veterans organizations. In case there are the amendment would change that hard 10 agreements to a 20% of such agreements shall be for nonprofit, fraternal, and veterans organizations. So if the casino were to enter into less than 50 marketing agreements, the number with respect to the nonprofit organizations would also correspondingly drop. So it would just be 20% of the overall agreements that the casino manager enters into.
Thank you for that amendment. Do I have a second? Representative Reese, second the amendment. Yes, question. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Jason, this would include like Knights of Columbus, I know the VFW is Shriners, groups like that.
Yes, I believe that the Shriners organization would fit. The definitions used in the bill are mirror those that are currently in the Charitable Gaming Act. So those that do charitable bingo, it would be those same kinds of fraternal and veterans organizations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Not changing really anything except if they only have 25 contracts out at the time, then if 20% of those would have to be service organizations. Representative Wagner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I believe the question was brought up in debate about whether the marketing agreements, is it like for a convenience store, it's individually one agreement, or is it one agreement for an entire chain?
Individual.
It would be individual. Okay.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, I move my amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill has been amended again. I have another amendment. That's good. Thank you. While this amendment's being drafted or handed out, I'll ask Jason to explain it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if you recall, one of the provisions under House Bill 2740 is to authorize the Kansas Lottery to do online lottery ticket sales over the internet or other digital network, subject to certain restrictions. The amendment as being distributed right now would strike that authorization from the bill. So if this is adopted, then the Kansas Lottery would not have the authority to do online lottery ticket sales under House Bill 2740.
Thank you for that amendment. Do I have a second? A second. The rank Vice Chair. Discussion on the amendment. I've Representative Arkamp, you're first. You're not first? Oh, okay. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm just curious as to the motivation for this amendment. This doesn't appear to have a lot to do with sports wagering, so why? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you've answered the question. The lottery does not have anything to do with sports wagering. As far as selling lottery tickets.
Would striking this have any sort of adverse effect on potential incoming state revenue from gaming?
Not on sports wagering. It may have an effect on sale of lottery tickets. Okay.
All right, noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just point out that it does impact the fiscal note. Removing this, it says that this provision would increase ticket sales by $75 million and increase the transfer to the state by an additional $10.9 million in the first full year of implementation.
That would be correct. Representative Miller?
This was language that was added in the bill. It's not current law.
I will turn to Jason on that. It is.
Yes, it's striking the amendments to current law that would authorize the lottery to do online ticket sales. The lottery currently does not have such authorization.
Currently, the law does not allow it,
Okay, so,
and we're just going back to the status quo.
and why was it put in this bill to begin with? Was it part of the grand agreement that we referred to when we heard the bill?
Each party would have to make that decision. But it's not really part of the expanded gaming act, or it's not really part of sports book. It's a separate entity as far as selling tickets online. The amendment was brought to me, and I was asked to get it in the bill.
And if I understood the previous questioner, it'll cost the state about $11 million to make this amendment.
Well, it's revenue that we have not, future revenue.
Right, it'll cost us about $11 million that we won't get, right? Did I understand that right?
That is true.
All right, thank you.
Representative Heiberger?
Mr. Chairman, I ask who the amendment is being offered on behalf of?
My leadership.
Okay.
Anything further? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Wagner.
I would somewhat second the point of my colleague across the way. If you read the fiscal note in its entirety, you see that the, I guess, sports wagering part of this, as it's constructed currently, is estimated to raise, $6 to $10 million annually on the basis of whatever, $500 million in sales. The iLottery part of it by itself was going to raise $10 million. The gambling part of it also, or sports wagering part of it, had an estimated additional cost from either KDADS or from the State Gaming Association of approximately $2.9 million estimated, which of course reduces actually what the state, as far as just from a revenue standpoint, I mean, this amendment by itself, by taking the lottery part out of it, actually cuts the fiscal note well over half, more like 60% or more. And so I would be opposed.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor of amendment number 3, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Chair's unsure. All in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. Oh, those opposed? Very well. The amendment fails. Thank you. I have 12. I have one more amendment that will be handed out. This is a technical amendment that has been drafted by the reviser. Jason?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is just purely a technical amendment to clean up some language to go along with the provisions of Section 2 that allow a casino manager to have up to 3 interactive sports wagering platforms. There's language on page 1, lines 22 and 23, that's being adjusted to account for multiple platforms. And then also on page 2, line 1, the term sports wagering manager is no longer in the bill. This is a reference to that's being updated to reflect it's a lottery gaming facility manager.
Questions of Jason? It is brought brought to us by the reviser. Do I have a second on the amendment? Representative Reese? Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All in favor of the technical amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. It is passed. Back on discussion of the bill. Further discussion on the bill. Yes, Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer an amendment.
Jason, you have that? Would you like Jason to explain it or would you like to explain it?
I can explain it while it's being distributed.
Thank you.
This amendment comes from the neutral testimony from the NFL that was requesting that the law prohibit prop bets related to penalties, injuries or penalties. So they mentioned that they believe this could pose a risk to the public's perception of the game integrity. And there are some provisions in the bill that do allow for some further regulation by the commission if they would realize there are other things that would need to be prohibited. But I just felt that we should add this in there. I don't think we should be betting on people getting hurt.
Thank you. Questions? I'm going to let Jason just touch on that for just a second. Jason, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment's on page 5 in new section 7 of the bill. This is a section that directs what the casino managers must do when operating sports wagering, including several prohibitions on the conduct of sports wagering. The amendment would add a further prohibition on conducting sports wagering on the occurrence of injuries, penalties, the outcome of player discipline proceedings, or any replay review for a sports event.
Thank you. Do I have a second on the amendment? Representative Hazelwood, thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for the carrier of the amendment. What are we defining as injuries? So if I have a prop bet or a future bet that a basketball player, is he going to play tomorrow, yes or no, due to fatigue or tiredness or rest, would that count as an injury? Would that be prohibited under this amendment?
I refer that to the reviser.
Jason, if you could.
Mr. Chairman, since the state owns and operates sports wagering, decisions like that as to the types of bets would be left to the Kansas Lottery to distinguish as to what actually comprises an occurrence of an injury. I would defer to the Kansas Lottery, but I would imagine they would be in consultation with the sports governing body as to what comprises an injury for this purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Representative Epley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just outlined. I just think you get into a definitional morass on this or this. I don't know. I mean, I just worry about the definitional issues that this raises. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Representative, you may close on your amendment.
I close.
Thank you. She has closed on her amendment of Representative Hoyt. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Division has been called. All in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
All opposed.
Right? I couldn't tell if you were raising your hand or not.
So what's the score?
The score is 12 to 9.
Thank you. The amendment passes. Thank you. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Miller.
I have an amendment.
Would you like Jason to explain it while it's being handed out, or would you like to explain it?
I'd like the scrivener to explain it, but he left the room, so I would defer to Jason, yes, sir, for accuracy.
Go ahead, Jason.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment that's being distributed places some prohibitions on casino managers being able to provide a line of credit. You can see that on page 2 of the balloon. Also requires the casino managers to include information and tools to assist players in making responsible decisions, including prominently displaying tools to set limits on the amount of time and money a person spends, prominently displayed information regarding compulsive gambling and ways to seek treatment, and persons with the ability to exclude the use of certain electronic payment methods if so desired. The next amendment of this is in section 10 of the bill. This is the section allowing a person to self-restrict themselves from placing sports wagers. There's an added provision that if that individual does go ahead and place sports wagering, then they forfeit their winnings, and those winnings would be credited to the Problem Gambling Grant Fund. The final provisions amend the Problem Gambling and Addictions Grant Fund to change the name of the fund to just the Problem Gambling Grant Fund, and to specify that 2% of the lottery gaming facility revenues and 2% of sports wagering revenues are to be provided to the Problem Gambling Grant Fund.
Thank you. Representative, do you further wish to be heard?
No, I think that was a good explanation. Thank you.
Got a question on this. You're changing the name, which is okay, but is it changing the amount that goes in? Because we have down, goes from 80,000 to 100,000. So this would change it to 2%.
The demand transfer of 100,000 would continue in statute. In addition to that, 2% of lottery gaming facility revenues and 2% of sports wagering revenues would go to the grant fund.
And this is new law. We don't do that now. The 2%.
I believe the lottery gaming facility revenues already send a portion to the Problem Gambling Fund. I'd have to double check on the percentage real quick.
Representative Hoyt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure, so does that impact the formula that we had, the first 50 million that goes to the state gaming revenue fund, and because that has the transfer to the Problem Gambling Grant Fund, and then the rest of the, like, up to the 100% is divvied out in the formula. So does some of that need to be adjusted to accommodate the 2%?
I'll direct that to Jason.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, there is already in statute a provision that 2% of the lottery gaming facility revenues are to be paid to the Problem Gambling and Addictions Grant Fund. So that's no change in law by specifying it in the balloon. The 2% of the sports wagering revenues is new to the bill, and so that is diverting that money from the state general fund or lottery operating revenue fund to the Problem Gambling Grant Fund under the bill. So that would be less money in the lottery's operating fund.
Thank you. And if I recall correctly, and I may not, is that the Problem Gaming Fund has never actually, entire amount has been used. I could be wrong in that, but that's my recollection. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question for the maker of the amendment, if I may. Under the no lottery gaming facility manager shall provide a line of credit to any person engaged in sports wagering, would that disallow any sign-up bonuses or anything like that?
Well, I'm unfamiliar with sign-up bonuses and how they work, but so I don't know.
So, if I may follow up, Mr. Chair. So, you see an ad maybe ran by DraftKings right now. You can sign up and deposit $250 in your account and then get a $250 sign-up bonus or a $250 credit, basically, a playthrough credit through like DraftKings. Would this allow that?
Well, I wouldn't be the ruler on such a question, but if I were, I'd say no.
Okay. Jason, what's your understanding?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my understanding of the intent of this amendment is that it would provide a line of credit in the traditional sense of a line of credit, not a promotional credit, as was described by Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you. And that's your intent, correct? Just a line of credit.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. That's me. Representative Heiberger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I noted on the attachment, down it strikes section C2. It says that monies in the problem gaming and addictions fund may be used to treat alcoholism, drug abuse, and other addictive behaviors. I was curious about the reason for that.
Thank you.
You
wish to
I guess that
respond?
was a question to the maker of the amendment.
Oh, maker of the amendment. Go ahead.
I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
On the attachment, strikes, first page, strikes section C2, which says that monies in the problem gambling and addictions fund may be used to treat alcoholism, drug abuse, and other addictive behaviors. I was wondering why that was stricken.
Because I believe that the purpose of these monies, this 2%, is for gambling addictions. And I believe that the money's been siphoned off for other purposes. I happen to think gambling addiction is a very real problem, and I don't believe we've invested enough resources in that specific problem, and particularly when we're inviting, and by the way, I support the underlying bill that promotes sports gaming, but I do recognize it comes with issues that should be addressed, and I want to make sure that they are addressed and not siphoned off to other purposes. That's the purpose of the amendment.
All right. Representative Penn.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. The question for the carry of the bill, Mr. Chairman?
Carry the amendment.
Of the amendment, I'm so sorry, for the carry of the amendment. You just mentioned that you are sensitive to gambling addictions, but we see the name addiction stricken throughout the amendment that you've offered. Can you explain why that is, please?
No.
I'll turn to the reviser.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I believe the name change is to correspond with the member's explanation of his intent that the grant fund be focused on problem gambling.
Was that helpful?
Not necessarily,
Okay,
Mr.
not
Chairman.
gambling addiction.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Anything further? Seeing none, Representative, you may close on your amendment. I need a second first. I have it from Representative Reese. Go ahead and close on your amendment.
Not being too repetitive, I've seen the pain of compulsive gambling. It is real, and it's every bit as devastating as other addictions. And I think if we're going to do what we're about to do, we need to address the consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. You have heard Representative Miller close on his amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendment passes.
Just step out and talk to Dan Hawkins. Just step out and talk to Dan Hawkins.
Okay. Back on the bill. Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see you because of Connie. I apologize. Representative Arnkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
You have an amendment. While the amendment appears to be large, would you like to explain your amendment?
Due to the size and what's involved, I'd like to defer to the reviser.
Thank you. Jason?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my understanding of the amendment would be to strike the contents of 2740 and replace it with the contents of 2021 House Bill number 2444. The main thrust of this is to restrict sports wagering to only being conducted by the Kansas Lottery. through interactive platforms that the lottery approves. It does allow for a marketing agreement with a professional sports team, and it also does create a white collar crime fund. The main difference would be, of course, with it being operated solely by the Kansas Lottery, all sports wagering revenues would be retained by the state, and there would be no contracts with any casino managers for the operation of sports wagering.
I know. So.
Representative, if you wish to further explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the state owns and controls gambling in Kansas, a constitutional thing. The people of Kansas voted it in so that the state brings in the revenue to help the general fund offset taxes. At some point in time, the casinos came in to have casinos. That all is passed. But right now we're looking at a new revenue stream, a new gambling option, sports wagering. So we have a choice really on who gets the money. If we let the casinos contract it out, we get a small percentage of the money. If we let the Kansas Lottery put out an RFP, contract it out, we get all of it. I see very little difference as far as putting out an RFP, signing a contract, and having the state lottery run sports wagering versus allowing the casinos to have a monopoly on it. What's the difference of revenue to the state? We heard an estimate about $1 billion of wagering happening. Across the country, out of $1 billion wagered, the hold is typically around 8 to 9%. That's what a lot of states are seeing. So 8 to 9%, that's $80 to $90 million. Of that $80 to $90 million, how much goes to overhead and the contractor? Somewhere around 30%, maybe a little bit more, maybe 40. So that would mean the state would get 60 to 70% of the 80 to $90 million. Doing the math, we're looking 30, 40, $50 million potentially a year versus, I think somebody said earlier, 6 to 10. It's a significant difference. We're making a deal on behalf of the people of Kansas. If I'm making this deal personally, I'm going to take more money. So happy to stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for perhaps you or the maker of the amendment. I see this House Bill 2444 is referred to the Committee on Federal and State Affairs. Did this get a hearing in Fed and State? Has this been heard in committee yet?
No.
Okay, so it hasn't been vetted. 19 pages, hasn't got a hearing yet, hasn't been fully vetted yet. That's a lot to read and go through. And I appreciate your summary there, but I would stand opposed just on the fact that it's 19 pages. It's basically a gut and go on a bill that hasn't been heard or vetted through committee yet. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would urge the committee to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? Representative Wagner.
In doing some reading on the whole notion of sports wagering, the NCSL has some decent articles, but one of the things that really struck me is that in their article of other states that have sports wagering, that 75 to 90% of the wagering takes place online. And in the whole sort of sense of, clicks and bricks in a retail sense, that this sports wagering is not really something that happens at a location. It's an online app, the vast bulk of it. And the notion that somehow there's some logic to tying it into the casinos, a physical location, really makes no sense. To me, the differential, again, look at the fiscal note on the current bill. It's really pretty anemic given the totality of the amount of money that's going to be wagered. And I think this is a good faith effort to protect the taxpayers' interests and make this a serious revenue stream instead of a very marginal revenue stream. So I would stand in support.
Thank you, Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for a second time. I would just counter that with it's my belief that the state shouldn't be involved in sports gaming at all, and we really shouldn't benefit other than simple taxes on sports betting. To me, the underlying bill, the agreement we have now with the casinos, is more of a free market position as opposed to the state of Kansas and the lottery being the sole bearer of sports gaming. To me, that's more of a monopoly. That's a state-sponsored monopoly by having the state of Kansas and the Kansas lottery be the bearer instead of giving it to the free market and the casinos and letting them do what they're good at, which is gambling, which is sports betting. So that's why I would oppose this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the recognition. In answering the previous question about this being unvetted, it looks to me like this is about exactly the same bill that we worked in the committee last year and passed out. Well, I don't know if we passed it out or not. I can't remember.
We did not pass
but
it.
It was, is this in fact, I'm going to ask this question to Jason, if this is in fact the same bill that we heard last year, because the bill that we're working today, 2740, is a total reversal of what we heard last year. So the 2444 or similar was heard pretty extensively in here last year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It did not pass out last year, and then it was carried on the floor, and it was it got a few votes. I don't remember what the number were on the floor of the House. This amendment. I would mention that this bill has not been vetted this year. There are some states that do it this way, but the state becomes responsible if you have one of those unusual upsets where a lot of money is paid out. The state would be responsible for that. I will tell you that if this gets on, we will have no sports betting because it's not been vetted. The casinos are not on board. The other parties are not involved. The retailers are not on board. I can't think of anybody that's on board. With that, further discussion, Representative Clayton.
Yes, I had a question. This might be more for the reviser, and I apologize, but do we know our neighboring states, are they mostly run by a combination of casinos in the state, or they run entirely statewide? Again, I don't like Missouri, but I want to beat them, and I want to make sure that, we wouldn't be doing something that would make it more difficult for us to compete with them.
That may be. I know Missouri's House passed their sports book bill last
I'm well
week.
aware.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know how they're doing it, though. I haven't read their bill.
It's my understanding we are unique because only the state of Kansas can own gaming in the state of Kansas based upon our Constitution. I am not sure about the state of Missouri, whether they have individual casinos or state-owned. But I will tell you, I talked to the representative, the bringer of the amendment yesterday. I thought it indicated to me that he wasn't going to bring it, but apparently he did. But the chair is totally opposed to this amendment. With that, I'll let the representative close. I need a second. Do I have a second for the amendment? Representative Wagner, you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did say probably wouldn't bring it.
I didn't say you promised. I said you indicated you wouldn't bring it.
We hear a lot about who's for this, who is against it. The casinos, the retailers. We represent the people of Kansas. And from the people of Kansas perspective, if the lottery puts out an RFP, signs a contract with a company that runs these sports wagering platforms, from their perspective, there is little to no difference. They're able to do sports wagering. The difference, though, is who gets the money. Does the money go to the state general fund, or does it go to the casinos? Let's remember who we represent. So who wins if the Kansas lottery runs it? It's the people of Kansas, which there is no free market because it's a constitutional issue. And the casinos have a monopoly through the Kansas Lottery. There is no free market. It's something the state does own and control. So please remember who we represent. With that, Mr. Chairman, I close.
He closes. Thank you, Representative. You heard Representative Arnkamp close on his amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Division has been called. All in favor of the Arnkamp amendment, raise the right hand.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can't tell if you have a hand raised.
Those opposed.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Thank you. The amendment fails. Back on the bill.
Who's going to make the motion?
Yeah. The chair recognizes Representative Arnberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After looking at one of your amendments, the iLottery one, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider since I voted on the prevailing side.
You may.
So I think that after a lot of us, we didn't have a chance to really fully dive into the iLottery after some of the questions, and I would like it to be stricken. So I'd like to make that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion to reconsider. All in favor, non-debatable. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a point of order. I don't recall you voting for that amendment.
Did we have division? She counted the votes, but she may have not counted herself.
I just didn't remember seeing you voting for it.
I believe the representative. I always believe representative.
Okay. If that's how we're going to do it, that's how we're going to do it.
There's no recorded vote. All in favor of reconsideration on the amendment? I have a second. From Representative Penn. All in favor of the motion to reconsider on the amendment on the iLottery, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called. All in favor of the motion to reconsider, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Did I count myself? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All opposed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12 to 10. Thank you. Motion to reconsider has failed. I am surprised. We are adjourned.